Dalal Street ends largely higher as buying continues in the broader markets. The Nifty and the Sensex gain closer around 1%, but the midcaps outperform. The index ends up by more than 1%. Banks, though, underperform in trade.
Bharti Airtel delivers a strong India performance. Tata Steel gains after good guidance and a brokerage upgrade. But Tata Motors and REC fall after both firms cut their guidance.
But the broader markets outperform, courtesy some earnings surprises. We had Garden Reach Shipbuilders, ITD Cementation, both of them delivered good set of numbers, while you had Dalmia Bharat Sugar, that is well reported, an inline set of numbers. But brokerages are positive on the stock. Well, hello and welcome to a fresh new edition of Markets Forward, your go-to show where we get you up to speed with regard to today's trading action and we set you up for tomorrow as well. I'm Nigel and joining me today is Vinny. Well, Vinny, it was a bit of a roller coaster ride, but at the end of it, well, we went on with some gains.
Absolutely went on with some gains. I thought that, maybe we would see a downside coming in, given in the afternoon we saw that fall and it did go in the red for a bit, at least the benchmark indices. But interesting day coming in, 24,600 above that mark.
Well, that's right. And in the next 20 minutes or so, we have got you covered. We'll get you all the big news, the key developments on the Dalal Street, and also we'll get you some top corporate voices and the events to track. But first up, let's tell you about what went on in today's trading session. Well, the Nifty ended in the green. The Nifty, in fact, scored essentially. We were up by close to around 100 points or thereabouts. That doesn't take away from the fact that at one point of time, we almost dipped into the red. The Nifty Bank, that's normally the top batsman, right? It has the highest weightage on the Nifty, banks as well as financials. That was a relative underperformer. But if you pull up the intraday chart of the Nifty Bank, you'll see that it took support at around the 20 DMA. And from there, it did a bit of a fight back. So that's the reason why, in fact, the Nifty could manage to end with some green. The India VIX, it had gone dancing away all the way to around 22 odd. From there, it's seen a cooling off. And even in today's trading session, it ended lower. You want the VIX to be under control because that gives you a sense in terms of the bullish sentiment. VIX, remember, is the fear index. So that's cooling off. That's good. Mid-caps, well, that's where the party was. And yet again, yesterday as well as the previous trading session, mid-caps did well. And today as well, your portfolios will be feeling good because the breadth of the market was firmly in favor of a number of stocks that are advancing. And the sector of the day was the metal stocks. The globe is a better place to be in. You have commentary that's coming out of the United States as well as China. Temporary deal, trade deal. So it helps avert global recession, which in turn is good for metal stocks. And you had some softness on the dollar index as well. All of them bode well. Sector of the day, 2.5% up.
Absolutely. Other than Nifty Metal, also we had seen Nifty Real Estate and Realty. That was among the other sector gainers, as well as Nifty IT today was showing some bit of a strength as well, both managing to hold on to gains of more than 1%. So both these sectors were also among the top sectoral gainers. Other than that, defense, that continues to be the play, and all those defense stocks were buzzing, railway stocks were buzzing in trade as well. But we'll take you through, and here's a lineup of what we have for you all in store in today's move in today's day. We start with the top movers and shakers for the day with Hormas, and stocks on our radar include Bharti Airtel. Following a steady Q4 performance, defense stocks took the spotlight in today's trade. We'll also bring you more on that and other top stories in just a bit. But last but not the least, we'll delve into what are the key market events to watch out for in tomorrow's trading session. So first up, let's go across to Hormas, who is waiting by to tell us from the big wall what are the top stock movers in today's trading session. Hormas.
All's well that ends well, isn't it? After the roller coaster, we still ended in the green. But what ended very much in the green was the defense space. Higher yesterday, higher today has been the case over the last 8 to 10 trading sessions. Look at Garden Reach, 14.5% higher. And with Garden Reach's results, the expectations of its peers have also gone up, with Cochin Shipyard and Mazagon Dock, Zentech having another 5% upper circuit, and BEL2 among the top Nifty gainers in today's session. Some of the other movers in today's session included the newsmakers, which was HBL Engineering after the Kavach 4.0 approval that it received, 12.5% higher. ITD Cementation after the order win, and the next three names are the inclusions in the MSCI Small Cap Index: Authum Investment, Acme Solar, and Sai Life, gains of up to 11%. And earnings reactions, HAL, the numbers year on year were lower but well better than estimates, so 3.5% higher on the stock. Rights too reacting to results, but negative earnings reactions coming in from Sirma and Metropolis, when REC cutting its AUM growth guidance for the year, and as a result the stock ending lower. And lastly, it was the railway names that were doing well in today's session, as has been the case over this entire week. Railtel, Titagarh, Ircon, all of them seeing gains of anywhere between 4% to as high as 10%. Back to you guys.
Okay, all right. Thanks a lot for that, Hormuz. Well, let's get in our market experts. We have Anand Tandem as well as Shrikant Chavan of Kotak Securities who join us on the show. Hi, gentlemen. Thanks a lot for joining in. Shrikant, you go first. The Nifty Bank, today it gave that fear that maybe in fact it's going to be giving it away. But it took support at around the 20-day MA and it did end only with a cut of around 100 points. What are the levels you're looking at both on the Nifty as well as on the Nifty Bank?
Good evening, Nigel, and good evening, everyone. Today, the most interesting part was that in the second half, when the market was down completely, it was around 23,500. We saw specific buying interest in Bank Nifty as well as in Nifty IT index. And both these indices actually helped the market to move higher by at least 100 points from the day's lowest level. So, also if we go through with India's volatility index, then there also we saw sharp cut from the highs, and there also based on its formation we can say that the certainty is again returning back to the market. So based on all these facts and the overall formations, I am of the view that the markets are heading for again 24,800 or 850. I am not expecting this market to cross the level of 25,000 so easily. We are expecting now market to consolidate within the broader range of 25,000 and 24,500 on the downside. We have, the market is having support of 10 days exponential moving average, 20 days simple moving average. So broadly, 24,500, 400 going to act as major support. And there we should look for taking some contraweights in the market. For the Bank Nifty, there also 55,500 is the hurdle to watch out for. Above that only we can see some more bullishness.
Okay, thanks so much for that, Shrikant, and those levels over there. So keep an eye on that. But let's move on and a bit more stock specific now. Bharti Airtel delivered a steady India performance and even stronger show in Africa. Analysts were quite upbeat on the stock as well. Rima is joining in with us here to give us more details on this front. Rima.
Thanks so much for that. So, Bharti Airtel is a big outperformer. The stock has gained 45% in the last 1 year. And in the last 3 years, the stock return stands at a whopping 170%. Now, the company seems to be delivering on all fronts. At least the Q4 numbers were solid. Consolidated numbers ahead of expectations. So, one piece of the business is Africa, where in their key market, Nigeria, the company undertook tariff hikes. There were large tariff hikes. So, some benefit came through in Q4, but even in the subsequent quarters, Africa numbers will look good. And then the other piece of the puzzle for them is the India mobile business, where again the company continues to execute well. There were no tariff hikes. The tariff hikes in India took place in July, so there was not much benefit in Q4, but on account of premiumization, strong execution, the company has delivered a good performance. 1.3% revenue growth. For the full year, revenue growth was about 18%. EBITDA margins are now inching towards 59.2%. ARPUs have been strong at 245 rupees per share, higher than its peer Jio. Subscriber addition has been also very good, 5 million on a quarter-on-quarter basis. So in all fronts, the company has done well this time.
All right, Rima, thanks a lot for that. Well, let's focus on Tata Steel. That was one of the top gainers in today's trading session. Remember, we here at CNBC-TV18 had spoken to the management, and there were 3 big points that the management had made. One was in terms of pricing. They said that pricing year, both in India, was up by close to 3,000 rupees per ton on a sequential basis, and even European pricing was looking up. So that was point number 1. Point number 2 was on cost. The coking coal cost, they said that on a consumption basis, it will fall by around $10 per ton, which is good news. And finally, on the EBITDA front, they said that in Europe, we'll have the EBITDA number moving into the green in the first quarter, and UK, which is the sore point in the European operations, well, that will gradually move back into the black as well. So that was the commentary. Brokerages like Nuvama, they went on their con call as well, and similar points were made out there. So they upgraded the stock to buy. They have raised the target price to around 177. They've tweaked their earnings estimates for the next few years. FY27 EBITDA estimate by around 6%, factoring in better profitability and lower fixed cost as well. And for the first quarter of FY26, they are saying that the EBITDA per ton will increase by around 2,000 rupees. Higher steel prices, lower coal costs. That seems to be the big takeaway. Anand, your view on Tata Steel? The stock, remember, had gone to around 180. Then it cracked to around 130. It spent some time actually in this vicinity of around 130 to 150. With the positive commentary, you think it's good enough to take the stock higher?
Well, the commentary comes from the fact that, we have a lot of protection for steel companies in India, and the government continues to do that. So the latest salvo that we have fired is on the US, where they are again saying that, they will increase, make it more difficult for importing steel from there. So far it was China, now it is other countries as well. Broadly, so long as there is protection, there will obviously be ability to build more money, and the volumes have been rising. So net, this is an industry which is well protected and therefore will continue to show growth.
Right. Shrikant, what's your view coming in also, both in terms of Tata Steel as well as Bharti Airtel? On the technicals, how are they looking like?
See, for Bharti Airtel, I can see, or I would say that the stock is finding a lot of, I'm to say, profit-taking sort of pressure close to 1900 levels, and it is rallied a lot to its extreme levels in the near term. So here I'm expecting stock to consolidate within the range of 1900 and 1800. So the upside looks limited. But for Tata Steel, after very long time, the stock has broken its important resistance level at 150. It is gradually moving upward, but today we saw substantial rally along with volumes. So based on the overall performance of the sector and in that Tata Steel, I'm of the view that the stock is heading for at least 165, 167 in the near term. So it looks good, and if there is any correction, we should look for taking long bets on Tata Steel.
Okay, can look to take long bets on Tata Steel. If you see a correction, keep an eye out on those levels also. But let's move on. Tata Motors fell nearly 2%, and this is despite a strong Q4 performance on account of a cautious commentary and outlook that came in amid the global uncertainties. Sudarshan is joining in with us to give us more details on this one. Sudarshan, over to you.
So Tata Motors was amongst top Nifty losers today, and it's despite company reporting earnings for Q4 FY25, and those earnings look better than expectations, but on the back of cautious outlook, you saw Tata Motors stock slipping almost 2%. And after the cautious outlook, most of the brokerages have turned negative. So we'll start with CLSA, which maintains the outperform call with a target of 805. It says company has reported Q4 earnings that met estimates, but JLR is cautious with respect to demand in FY26, but it believes that company will be able to meet FY26 margin guidance as far as JLR is concerned. Jefferies maintains underperform call and target here is 630. It says Q4 EBITDA was down 2% year-on-year, but 4% higher than expectations. Also, it believes that JLR may have tough FY26 on tariffs, increasing costs and rising competition in China. It has cut FY26-27 EBITDA estimates by 8%, but has raised EPS estimates in the range of 3 to 4%. Nomura has downgraded the stock to neutral and target is rupees 799. Kotak Institutional Equities has downgraded the stock to reduce and target is 600. Let's listen to what management had to say on Q4 earnings and the growth outlook.
Overall demand situation as far as India is concerned is, I would say, is modest, is decent, not scorching. At the same time, neither is there any major concern at this point in time. So I would expect modest growth coming into this year. On the commercial vehicle business, I think the underlying fundamentals of the growth is very much intact. On the passenger vehicle growth, I think we did have a lukewarm growth last year, nothing much to talk about last year. And I would suspect that this year would be an year where it will be modest growth once again and gradually build back as the year progresses. In this kind of external environment that we are currently facing, which is a bit unclear, because one is, of course, it's challenging. The other is also we are not clear what exactly how it plays out. Take the UK-US tariff, for instance. We welcome really the deal that has been done, which is now reducing tariffs from 25% to 10%. But it has gone up from 2.5 to 10, number one. Number two, even that reduction, we are not clear when does it become effective? Is it applicable for parts? Is it applicable retrospectively? So those are questions that are still out there, and we are hopeful to get clarity on that. US is probably likely to be having a lower growth next year compared to what we had last year. And therefore, we need additional sources of growth. The first market that is looking very good for us is UK, and we would intend to accelerate that.
Okay, Anand, does this one excite you? Tata Motors, it was a 1,000 rupee stock. It's given a 30% correction. Exciting enough, or you'll skip this one?
Well, let's look at the good things first. The debt levels have come down, and therefore, to that extent, JLR is looking a little more able to handle the volatility that you're likely to witness in the market. But that pretty much is it. They are losing market share in India. They are not going to be able to do much in the US and UK. UK is not not a great growth market. Is not to do anything. Your US is actually is going to be in trouble as far as Tata Motors is concerned. So I don't see much to be bullish about for the company as a whole.
Okay, all right. You're not too bullish about it. Srikanth, what about you on the charts? How's it looking? A stock after 35% correction. It took some support at lower levels. Do you think this is a dead cat bounce, or can it, take support and bounce up further?
See, like Nigel, this stock has spent a lot of time below 200-day simple moving average, and after hitting the extreme levels of 550, now again it is like crossing all its important levels. So I am of the view that it is into mean reverting trend, where we see most of the time retesting of 200-day simple moving average, which is currently at 800 levels. So based on technical formation, I am of the view that the stock is heading for at least 800, 825. There we should look for taking either profit, or we should look for reducing exposure. But at these levels, the overall formation is suggesting us that all this bad news is already priced in and stock is heading higher.
Okay. That's the view coming in on Tata Motors. But let's move on, talk about defense stocks, because they were rallying in trade today. This came in after we saw Garden Reach Shipbuilders as well as HAL. They beat the Q4 estimates. Ria is joining in with us to give us a roundup in terms of the numbers of both the companies.
Well, yes, defense and shipbuilding stocks have been in focus yet again today, and let's talk about the three big movers. The first one is Garden Reach Shipbuilders, which reported quite a healthy set of numbers yesterday. The revenue saw an increase of around 62% on a year-on-year basis. Even the EBITDA and net profit jumped up by 144% and 119% respectively, both on a year-on-year basis. EBITDA margins also saw an expansion of 454 basis points, coming in at 13.5% in this quarter versus just about 8.9% that we saw in Q4 of last year. For the full year FY25 as well, we've seen good growth on all fronts. The net profit margin was also above the company's guidance of over 8%. The order book details haven't been disclosed yet, but the company did say in their Q3 earnings call that they expect the order book to come down to about 22,000 odd crores as execution is picking up, and the order book at the end of Q3 stood at about rupees 23,877 crores. Some key things to watch out for GRSE going ahead will be the management's comments on order book and execution, and also an update on the delivery of one of their key projects, which is the 8 ASW shallow watercrafts, all of which are expected to be delivered by October 2026. And remember, the first ship was delivered by the company to the Indian Navy just last week. The stock is trading with gains, very strong gains of around 17 to 18% today, but still down about 20% off its 52-week high. Cochin Shipyard is also trading with gains of up to 13% today in a rub-off effect from GRSE, and this company is also expected to come out with a good set of numbers tomorrow, so we will be watching out for that. HAL is the third stock that we'll be talking about, up around 3 to 4% after reporting a good set of numbers today. The revenue did go down by around 7.2% on a year-on-year basis, but this was off a high base. The net profit and EBITDA also declined by around 10% and 7.8%, but they were significantly higher than our estimates. EBITDA margins came in at 38.6%, down about 129 basis points on a year-on-year basis, but still well above our expectations of 27.6% margins. Order book details again haven't been disclosed for HAL, but they do have an FY26 order book target of about rupees 2.6 lakh crores. Some key things to watch out for in the earnings call on Friday will be the management's comments on the LCA Mark 1A delivery timelines and further engine deliveries from General Electric, improvement in working capital execution schedule of ALH, and of course the management's comments on the order book and execution ahead.
Thank you so much for that, Ria. Anand, your view coming in on the defense names, not only GRSE, HAL, but all these defense stocks have been buzzing since the last 1 week that you look at it. Even smaller names like Zen Technologies, that's also seeing a run-up coming in. So what's your view on the defense pack? Is it something that you would be looking at now?
Well, you have to stop worrying about the valuations if you want to invest in any of these. There is no question that their order book will continue to rise, and as will the order book of all defense companies around the world. So the smaller ones obviously make more sense because they will automatically gain a little more. But the large ones as well, I mean, Hindustan, for example, HAL, for example, should actually be delivering some Tejas aircraft this year, given that they are supposed to be getting some engine And if that happens, obviously their conversion from order to revenue will also improve considerably. So there is going to be growth in the sector for the foreseeable future. The only thing is that, the valuations are already reaching the same level as the global majors without the same kind of technological capabilities that the global majors have. The one company I'd love to invest in, unfortunately, is not listed, which is BrahMos.
Okay, all right. Thanks a lot, gentlemen. Anand as well as Sri Markets. We'll come back, getting you all and we'll see as well with the events. Don't go anywhere.
Welcome back to Markets Forward on CNBC-TV18. Now let's get you the top corporate voices that we had on the channel through the course of the day. First up, we spoke to Sai Life Sciences. The management said that they will be outsourcing from China. That will remain a bit uncertain. Long-term trends is clearly shifting towards diversification away from China. It added that 20% of its business came from America pharma firms, while business growth would also come from operating leverage. It has guided for 20% CAGR growth over 5 years, and this is due to a lumpy CDMO business.
Well, PG Electroplast delivered a solid set of numbers in the fourth quarter. The management guided for 30-35% revenue growth in FY26 and has pegged the capex at around 8 to around 900 crore rupees. It also noted an industry-wide demand slowdown expected in FY26. The firm also said that the production of its AC compressors is expected to commence by January next year, and that will help them in terms of margins.
Finally, Syrma SGS Technologies management guided for a 30 to 35% revenue growth in FY26, driven by favorable product mix. It pegged a FY26 EBITDA margin at 8% on a conservative basis and reiterated its export target of 1,000 crore rupees.
And before we wrap up, we need to get you set up for tomorrow's trading session. So let's get you all the key events to watch. Ria standing by to help us out with that list. Ria, take it away.
Let's take a look at the key events to watch out for tomorrow. First up, we have the UK GDP data coming out. There's also the employment and GDP data in the European Union. In the US, we have the retail sales print and the manufacturing output, as well as the initial jobless claims data that will be coming out tomorrow. Fed Chairman Powell is going to speak at the Thomas Lobach Research Conference. US President Donald Trump will be flying to meet the Abu Dhabi Prime Minister and is expected to continue his travels in the Middle East. Ukraine President Zelensky will attend peace talks in Turkey, and China is expected to reduce its bank reserve requirement ratio by 50 basis points. Back home in India, we have a lot of companies reporting their quarter 4 numbers, which include the likes of Allied Blenders and Distillers, Balrampur Chini Mills, Cochin Shipyard, Godrej Industries, IKS, ITC Hotels, JSW Energy, Keynes Technology, NCC, PB Fintech and Signature Global as well. A lot of companies are also going to hold board meetings tomorrow to consider a fundraise, which include Allied Blenders, Godrej Industries, Omax, Tube Investment, Investments and Wellspun Enterprises as well. Seagull India is also going to hold a board meeting to explore any investment, including the merger of Seagull Infra Projects Private Limited, which is a subsidiary of the company, with CNC Construction Limited. Another event to keep your eye out on is that the Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman will be meeting PSP chiefs for an annual review. So keep your eye out on all of these events for tomorrow.
Thank you so much for that, Ria. But with that, we wrap up this edition of Markets Forward on CNBC TV18. Thank you so much for tuning in. And after the break, we'll be back with more news and updates, so don't go anywhere.
Hello, welcome to Business 360. I'm Shireen Bhan. The headlines that we're tracking for you this evening. Prime Minister Modi chairs the first Cabinet Committee on Security meeting post-Operation Sindoor. The Chief of Defence Staff and heads of the tri-services brief President Murmu about India's military action against Pakistan. The BSF soldier who had been detained by Pakistan after inadvertently crossing the border last month handed over to Indian authorities. The US announces investments worth $600 billion from Saudi Arabia. This includes an arms deal worth $140 billion. Trump, who's in West Asia, reiterates claims that the US helped broker the ceasefire between India and Pakistan, tells Fox News, and I quote, "I told them that we can do better with peace. They agreed," end of quote. Indian equities end flat after a highly volatile session as the focus turns to earnings. Stock-specific action in focus today. The Nifty and the Sensex end with marginal gains. The rupee continues to strengthen as dollar selling by exporters offsets dollar buying by importers. The Cabinet clears HCL and Foxconn Semiconductor joint venture worth 3,706 crore rupees, paves the way for a plant in UP's Jewar, which would be India's sixth chip-making facility. The plant is likely to have a monthly manufacturing capacity of 36 million chips and is expected to create 2,000 direct jobs. Automaker Tata Motors says it will focus on new launches in its passenger vehicle business to keep competition at bay and deliver better than expected growth. Indicates that launches in the EV space will be a priority, adding that JLR will look at expanding into other markets and step up operations in the UK and EU to offset the hit from US tariffs. Microsoft cut over 6,000 jobs across departments, levels and geographies. This will be its second largest layoff exercise. The company says this is part of organizational changes necessary to best position itself for a dynamic marketplace. Israel resumes airstrikes after briefly pausing military action in Gaza for the release of the last known American hostage in Hamas captivity. Over 60 people, including children, are killed overnight. The European hospital complex in Khan Yunis was struck as well. Israel claims it targeted a Hamas command center that was operating under the hospital. Russia and Ukraine continue to trade fire even as Ukraine's Zelensky agrees to travel to Turkey to meet with Russian President Putin. Russia is yet to decide on attending. European leaders threaten tighter sanctions on Russia if it fails to agree to a 30-day unconditional ceasefire. Justice B.R. Gavai takes oath as the 52nd Chief Justice of India. He is the first practicing Buddhist and the second person from the scheduled caste community to lead the nation's judicial system. He will have a short tenure of just over 6 months. Well, straight to the top story this evening. Prime Minister Modi chaired the first Cabinet Committee on Security meeting since India and Pakistan halted their military action. Now, the government has already rejected claims that the US and China intervened to broker a ceasefire deal between the two sides. Chief of Defence Staff Anil Chauhan and the Tri-Services Chiefs briefed President Draupadi Murmu about Operation Sindoor. The President commended the valour and dedication of the armed forces. Reports suggest that the security of External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar has been beefed up after a review of his Z category cover. Security has also been tightened at the Paradip port in Orissa after a ship with 21 crew members arrived with crude oil for Indian Oil Corporation. No crew was allowed to leave this ship. And Abhimanyu Sharma joins us now with the latest developments. Abhimanyu, take us to what transpired at that CCS meeting and some of the other crucial developments in the India-Pak standoff and where things currently stand.
A meeting of the CCS and the Union Cabinet concluded sometime back at the Prime Minister's residence. This was the second meeting held after the commencement of the Operation Sindoor and the fourth meeting held after the terror attack in Pahalgam. While there is a pause on hostilities between India and Pakistan, the pause continues on military action. However, the vigil has been stepped up across the land, sea and air borders by different forces to ensure no misadventure or untoward incident by any element. It remains to be seen how the situation is going to pan out, even as de-escalation efforts continue from India's side. Also, India's BSF Jawan, who was held by the Pakistani forces, has been released. And in another development, India had expelled an official working with the Pakistani High Commission in New Delhi. And a similar action in retaliation has also been taken by Pakistan. So clearly, de-escalation efforts are continuing, but still there is skepticism over the actions by Pakistan and the kind of provocative statements which have been made by several Pakistani leaders and the entire Pakistani leadership in the recent past. Also, India till now has rejected any efforts or claims by any other country to intervene between India and Pakistan as far as dispute resolution is concerned, be it countries like United States or China. So clearly, de-escalation efforts are being looked at and the vigil continues to be high on the Indian side.
Abhimanyu, many thanks. US President Trump reiterating his earlier claim that he did a good job convincing India and Pakistan to pause military operations. In an interview with Fox News on board Air Force One, Trump reiterated that he did not like what was happening between the two nations. Trump's comments during an interview to Fox News come in the middle of his official visit to West Asia since becoming the president for the second time. Yesterday, he signed a $142 billion defense sales agreement with Saudi Arabia. The kingdom has pledged an overall investment commitment of $600 billion in the US. Speaking at the summit in Riyadh, President Trump also announced plans to lift sanctions on Syria following the fall of the Assad regime. He met Syrian President al-Shara before he departed for Qatar's Doha. President Trump is also expected to travel to the United Arab Emirates later this week. He also issued a strong message to Iran.
I want to make a deal with Iran. If I can make a deal with Iran, I'll be very happy. If we're going to make your region and the world a safer place. If Iran's leadership rejects this olive branch and continues to attack their neighbors, then we will have no choice but to inflict massive maximum pressure, drive Iranian oil exports to zero like I did before. If you know that, they were a virtually bankrupt country because of what I did. They had no money for terror. They had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah.
Well, that is President Trump speaking in Saudi Arabia. On to the day's market action. Indian equities ending the day flat after a volatile session. The Sensex and the Nifty ending with marginal gains, while the mid-cap index rose more than 1%. That's the story there. 88 points higher for the Nifty. The Sensex 180 points higher. The Nifty Bank down 139. It's a 600-point uptick on the mid-caps. Financials underperformed today. That's the story for our markets. We'll be standing by now to wrap up the market action for us. Surbi.
Well, middle of the week, and it was another quiet day, quiet especially if you were looking at the large cap screen, and not so quiet and fairly pleasant and green for the mid caps today. The market is consolidating, and while for most parts of it, the index was either flat or up about 0.2, 0.3%. But like I'm saying, it's the broader market action being driven by specific stock news, by earnings, and that index, the mid-cap index, was up 1%, and the advance decline ratio was very strong, over 3 stocks advancing for every one that was declining. Once again, defense was the clear, favored part of the market. Today, the Nifty Defense Index was up about 2.5%. If you talk about the gains so far this week, then this index has put on about 8%. That's the sense of buying, and a couple of good earnings. For instance, Garden Reach Shipbuilders, they've only added to the sentiment and the excitement around this space. In fact, the defense stocks that were really up and about today included names like Garden Reach, Cochin Shipyard, and even HAL. The Achilles heel for the market is proving to be banks once again. The Bank Nifty was underperforming. It actually ended down with a minor red cut as well. And the question here is FPI flows, and I'm going to come back to this point in just a second. But let's complete the Nifty tally. The gainers today included Tata Motors, Shriram Finance. A lot of the metal and material stocks are doing very well. So whether it is Hindalco or Tata Steel, or names like Coal India and ONGC, this entire side of the market, commodities, had a very good going for itself. And of course, there was Tata Steel, which was reacting well to the brokerage upgrades as well. Eternal, these were some of the other names that performed fairly okay. Technology pulled back, so it's like one day up, one day down for tech. Today was one of the up days, so HCL Tech, Tech Mahindra, etc. These names were up and about. The losers on the Nifty included names like Asian Paints, Cipla, and Tata Motors. Mid caps, now this is where the action was. Let me talk to you about the high flyers. A lot of these numbers, a lot of these stocks responding very well to numbers. ITD Cementation, Sai Life, then there were others. Novama had a very good session, 7% higher, and some of the PSUs like Aircon, Railtel, Mishra Dhatu, all of them had a good day. The downside included names like Sirma and REC. The key challenge for the market is now going to be the Chinese outperformance. The Hang Seng was up 2.2% today. It's already up about 3.5% for the week. And the critical question is, will FPIs make a tactical shift towards China given the valuation comfort and the good news on the US-China trade deal? That could put some pressure on flows coming to us in the near term, and that's a big watch point over the next couple of days.
All right, Surbi, many thanks for joining us. From equities to commodities, crude oil prices softened after nearing 2-week highs. This after industry data showed that US inventories rose last week. Meanwhile, gold prices are down. In fact, they've eased after the trade tensions between US and China dented safe haven demand. Profit booking has also followed, which as we've been seeing has weighed on the yellow metal. The wholesale price index easing to its lowest level in 13 months for the month of April, led by a fall in prices of food, manufacturing goods and fuel. Wholesale inflation coming in at 0.85% as against over 2% in March. Food inflation declined to 2.55% and manufactured products inflation decreased to 2.62%. Retail inflation also slid to a 6-month low in April, so good news continues there on the inflation front. In a big boost for India's semiconductor drive, the Union Cabinet has approved the setting up of a new semiconductor unit in Jewar in UP. Now, the plant will be a joint venture between Foxconn and the HCL Group. The project will have an outlay of 3,700 crore rupees and will have the capacity to generate 36 million chips per month. Speaking at the briefing, Ashwini Vaishnav, the minister, said that this will create 2,000 direct jobs. He also added that the plant will meet 40% of domestic demand. Take a look.
Foxconn, yes, this is the second attempt they have made. The partner they have selected is a very good partner. Last time also they had their own internal reasons for not taking that unit forward. I don't want to comment on that. But HCL has a very long history of manufacturing electronics and computers. In this particular, they have come with a very specialized technology. This is a technology called wafer. And this is especially focused on the display driver chips. There, what we understand, unit is there. The display panel will also come to India. So this will more or less meet about 40% of India's capacity.
Well, that's Ashwini Vaishnav there on the decision taken by the cabinet to clear the joint venture between Foxconn and the HCL Group to set up a chip manufacturing facility in Jaipur in UP. The US Trade Representative Jameson Greer has clarified that the baseline tariff of 10% on all imports into the US, irrespective of country of origin, is here to stay. Speaking to CNBC, Greer said that US officials are in active discussion with several countries to reduce additional tariffs. He also said he plans to meet India's Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal very soon.
The focus of this agreement and the talks over the weekend were really to address the current escalated situation, which was tantamount to an embargo, which was not sustainable for either side. So we're able to get to a position where the United States still has substantial tariffs on China. China retains some, not nearly as much as we did, but we're in a position where we can actually talk. We can do it constructively, and to your point, taking down non-tariff barriers, of which there are many. China's the largest challenge by far on that front. That will take time, but the Chinese, they want to talk about it, we want to talk about it, and we'll see where that leads. I'm going for my standing call with the Indian Commerce Minister, who's my counterpart on trade matters. Then this afternoon I'm flying to Korea to meet with the Korean Trade Minister over the next coming days, as well as trade ministers from many other Asian countries who are gathering for APEC meetings. So all of this is happening in parallel, and we are happy to move as quickly as other parties are willing to move. Everyone saw the UK move very quickly. In Switzerland, in between all the meetings with the Chinese, I met with the Swiss president. They want to accelerate things. So we're moving as quickly as we possibly can with folks who want to be ambitious. We just want to make sure we have secure supply chains, we get as much production back home as possible, and having a 10% global tariff, that's going to help reduce the trade deficit, which is the primary driver of the whole program.
Well, that's the U.S. Trade Representative. Now, speaking of China, India has rejected Beijing's attempts to rename certain places in Arunachal Pradesh. Officials from the Ministry of External Affairs have said that China's attempts will not alter the reality that Arunachal Pradesh is an integral part of India. This is China's fifth attempt to rename places in the state. The boundary dispute between India and China over Arunachal Pradesh has been a long-standing source of friction. Beijing has repeatedly claimed that the state is a part of historical Tibet. Back to corporate news, Tata Motors says the company plans to intensify its passenger vehicle launches in the current fiscal year. Speaking to my colleague Parikshit Luthra, the company's CFO PB Balaji said that driving up sales in the electric fleet segment will be a priority. Added that Jaguar Land Rover will look for alternate markets and will accelerate its growth in the UK and the European market. Take a look.
Overall demand situation as far as India is concerned is, I would say, is modest, is decent, not scorching. At the same time, neither is there any major concern at this point in time. So I would expect modest growth coming into this year. On the commercial vehicle business, I think the underlying fundamentals of the growth is very much intact. On the passenger vehicle growth, I think we did have a lukewarm growth last year, nothing much to talk about last year. And I would suspect that this year would be an year where it will be modest growth once again and gradually build back as the year progresses. In this kind of external environment that we are currently facing, which is a bit unclear, because one is of course it's challenging, the other is also we are not clear what exactly how it plays out. Take the UK-US tariff for instance. We welcome really the deal that has been done, which is now reducing tariffs from 25% to 10%. But it has gone up from 2.5 to 10, number one. Number two, even that reduction, we are not clear when does it become effective? Is it applicable for parts? Is it applicable retrospectively? So those are questions that are still out there, and we are hopeful to get clarity on that. US is probably likely to be having a lower growth next year compared to what we had last year. And therefore, we need additional sources of growth. The first market that is looking very good for us is UK, and we would intend to accelerate that.
Yes. CFO PB Balaji on Motor and Centimeter at 6 p.m. and 10:30 p.m. right here on CNBC-TV18. The big global story, tech giant Microsoft is set to lay off around 6,000 people across geographies, levels and departments, though this will be about 3% of its workforce. It will be the second largest layoff exercise that the tech giant is implementing. In a statement to CNBC, the company said, and I quote, "We continue to implement organizational changes necessary to best position the company for success in a dynamic marketplace." Analysts also believe that the organizational change will help Microsoft achieve its $80 billion capital spend target for with this fiscal. Electronic giant Sony's operational income ahead of street estimates, however, dropped 11% on an annual basis. The company also announced a share buyback of up to $1.7 billion. And defence equipment manufacturer Hindustan Aeronautics surging in trade after its profit and margins both ahead of street expectations. Net profit fell by nearly 8% year-on-year basis, but that was higher than what the profit was higher than what was expected. Revenue also fell by 7%. Meanwhile, margins came in at 38.6%. Management said they are working on improving working capital and execution schedule of advanced light helicopters. We will head into a break, but up next, Justice B.R. Gavai takes oath as the 52nd Chief Justice of India. He's the first practicing Buddhist and the second person from the scheduled caste community to lead the nation's judicial system. That and more when we return.
Network 18 is now the clear leader in digital media with 55% more users on native platforms and social media than Times Internet. Network 18, the undisputed leader of news networks, way ahead of the times.
In international news, Israeli forces have intensified attacks on Gaza, killing at least 65 Palestinians since midnight. Missiles hitting 2 hospitals in the region, killing 45 people, including 22 children. Israel claimed it targeted a Hamas command center that was operating under the hospital. Russia, China and the UK have rejected a US and Israel plan for distributing aid in Gaza and said they've urged Israel to lift the 2-month blockade on Gaza. Ukraine's Zelensky has maintained that he will leave Turkey's capital of Ankara to attend the peace talks in Istanbul only if Russian President Putin is present. Moscow has not clarified if the Russian leader will attend the negotiations in Istanbul. Meanwhile, European leaders have indicated that they will press ahead with further sanctions against Russia if the talks in Turkey do not result in a ceasefire. Justice B.R. Gavai took oath as the 52nd Chief Justice of India. President Murmu administered the oath. Justice Gavai will have a tenure of over 6 months. He is the first Buddhist Chief Justice and only the second Chief Justice from the scheduled caste community. Ashmit joins us to give you a brief profile of India's 52nd Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Ashmit.
Well, Justice B.R. Gavai assuming charge as India's 52nd Chief Justice. The President today administered the oath to the new CJI in the presence of the Prime Minister as well as the entire top deck of the government. Now, bear in mind, this is for the records book. He'll only be the second judge from a scheduled caste community to come to the top chair of the Indian judiciary. He will, however, have a brief tenure of just a little over 6 months. He's due to retire in November of this year. Now, speaking of his journey, he began his journey in 1985, first as a lawyer. In 2003, he was elevated to the Bombay High Court, and in 2019 he was elevated to the highest court of the country, the Indian Supreme Supreme Court. And since then, he's had a prolific body of work, over 700 benches, over 300 judgments that he's authored. And speaking of judgments, in January of 2023 is when he was a part of the bench that had upheld the 2016 demonetization exercise. Later that year, in 2023, in December, is when he was a part of a bench that had upheld the abrogation of Article 370. Cut to 2024, he was a part of a bench that struck down electoral bonds and their legality. Subsequently, he also was a part of a 7-judge bench that had granted states the right to subclassify the SC/ST quota. And further, in December of last year is when he had come down heavily on bulldozer demolition by various state governments as a form of penal action. So a phenomenal body of work. The Indian judiciary looking now to him for leadership for the next 6 months.
Ashwat, many thanks. The government has said it has enough coal to cater to power demand, which is expected to peak this month due to heat waves in some states. Government sources tell CNBC-TV18 the thermal power plants have enough coal to last at least 25 days. Abhimanyu is back with us with more. Abhi.
While the mercury is rising across the country, ample coal is available at pit heads. That's the word coming in from the government. Government sources have told CNBC-TV18 that around 25 days of coal stock is available at pit heads and thermal power stations across the country. Now, this is despite an increase in temperatures which has been noted in the past few days. Also, there have been several patterns with respect to different regions, and these regional patterns are also governing the kind of power demand in respective regions. While places like Gujarat and Telangana have witnessed heat waves already, and due to several heat waves being witnessed, the projected peak demand for power has already been witnessed in these particular states. However, in places in North India, there have been several showers and several reliefs in terms of rain, and that has led to some cooling down of temperatures, which has ensured till now that the projected peak demand has not been achieved. It remains to be seen how the situation is going to pan out, even as the government is working to improve last mile connectivity in terms of transportation of coal and logistics to ensure that it's not just high production of coal, but also last mile connectivity, which will boost power generation and will provide ample coal not just to the power sector but also to the non-power sector like the steel sector. The government is also looking to beneficiate coal in a large way to ensure that purification of coal takes place even before transport, to improve overall logistical efficiency and to also save on infrastructural costs while transportation of coal.
Abhimanyu, many thanks for joining us. And with that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of Business 360. The news will continue right here on CNBC-TV18. Stay tuned. We're back in a minute with more.
What was the one that surprised you? What was the one that you were absolutely sure of?
Barfi was one which was the most difficult to pin down, but you knew it at a visceral level, you reacted to the material. Chennai Express actually was another film where, you know, there was a full narration that happened with a group of 20 people, and we were laughing off and like falling off our chairs.
What was a casting call that you made that kind of worked out the way that you had imagined it to?
I think probably Dangal, and at that time, of course, Irfan. He was someone we had in mind. He would have done a wonderful job. But then I got a call from Amir at that time. Many other stars of his stature might not have been okay with playing an overweight wrestler who's like a bit of a has-been, who's living out his dreams through his daughters.